Ugh.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
No.
This guy in chat keeps saying, after hours is pumping hard right now. Trump is capitulating to China.
No. I'm too vain. That's exactly right. I look back and I think, oh, those headphones are pushing up my hair. Isn't that sad? That's so
Shave
sad.
your head.
What ping specifically can we be racist at? I think it depends on the game. For StarCraft, like less than 60 was okay. For League, I think like 20 to 40 was okay. For fighting games, I don't know. I think they generally like low latency on fighting games, but my guess is going to be it probably really matters from netcode to netcode, and then some types of fighting games are probably better on higher ping, and some are just like unplayable on higher ping. So I don't know, but that's up to each gamer to decide when your racism comes out.
That's sad.
You never look back if you do.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
It's freedom.
I have a big dent here from when a meteorite landed on me when I was a kid.
A meteorite.
Yeah.
Oh, funny story.
I know.
I've got plenty of cuts on my head. I got them all over the place.
Well, you're looking pretty unscarred.
Oh, the back of my head. I have one when I was a little kid. It's pretty big. That one of these cranes that lifts up sewer pipes. Those big concrete pipes banged me off the back of the head. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
Grayed out. Went to the hospital.
Were you a different person before that experience?
I don't know. I need to have talked to my mom. I was always a little
This
wild.
could be of autobiographical significance. You know?
Oh, there's definitely a lot of head trauma.
Were you knocked out?
My personality. No.
Okay,
I stayed
that's
conscious,
the-
but I got
that's
close.
the big predictor.
I got gray. I grayed out that I came back to. I didn't.
Fuck. Apparently, anytime you get a concussion, that's always bad. There's like long-term damage. I've been knocked out twice in my life. I think one in kickball or something in school, and then in another. It feels unhinged to say, but I think this is normal stuff. For kids, you ever play games where you try to find like the biggest sticks that look like weapons and you just like fucking fight each other with them? I got smacked in the fucking eye, hardcore, and I had to wear an eye patch for like 2 months. No, it must not have been 2 months, but I think I got knocked out from that too. Bro, sometimes you just find the perfect fighting sticks, okay? And just like, we have to do combat right now, okay? Holy shit, look, these are like made for murdering each other.
Completely go unconscious. So Jamie went golfing this weekend with O.J. Simpson's golf clubs.
Uh-oh.
Not
You
with
need-
OJ, he's
you
not
should
here.
be exercised. I think that would be the next step.
Jamie bought O.J. Simpson's golf clubs after he
This
died.
is like a childhood dream?
No, they were just for sale. I saw them for sale. I said, why not? They came in. I wanted some big grips.
Yeah,
They weren't that
a
expensive.
couple of my friends. What did Shane get? Shane got a bunch of
I
stuff,
talked
right?
him into buying some stuff, yeah.
He got like scarves and
Ties. He bought a bunch
Ties?
of ties.
I think scarves too.
Okay. He bought a trophy
A trophy.
and a Bill Clinton
Yeah.
signed photo.
And he spent thousands of dollars.
What was this? This some sort of OG?
If Trump pulls everything back to before the terror suicide, the economy's still turbo fucked, right? The markets and everything will probably rebound significantly, and most of the damage, in my opinion, will probably shift to long-term damage at that point. Meaning that, like, the U.S. place in the world is going to be hurt significantly, and our ability to negotiate stuff in the future is going to be hurt significantly. But we're not. The fallout from that is going to be a lot longer term, would be my guess.
J. Simpson auction?
Yeah, it was like an estate sale, yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
One time at school, some kid made a snowball, put it in the freezer, took it with him to school the next day after. That shit was insane. Damn. Usually what we would do is you would just find ice. Like around schools, there's always going to be places where like water is like dripping or whatever. And so usually there's places where there's like icy things. You would just find ice and then you would make snowballs around the ice and then you would throw that at people and you fucking get them.
You know, he's dead now, so you can get his stuff.
Right, for nothing. Pennies on the dollar.
Well, only people like Jamie and Shane
arguable.
are dumb enough to buy it. It's like for a goof. It's one of those things like you're either getting it for a goof or you're a very dark person.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't want to own it, even for a goof. Like if I found OJ played pool, I wouldn't want his cue.
Was there cues? No, there wasn't. There was a weird notebook that Robert Kardashian had like handwritten stuff to him.
Blood
I
splatter.
was like, whoa, that might be interesting. But
It's taking a vicious turn, Joe, already.
Yeah, that's a dark story.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you only know the surface of it.
Well, it's dark in both ways. It's also dark in planted evidence. You know, there was blood at the scene of the crime that had preservative in it, allegedly, supposedly, according to Robert Kardashian, and according to, I believe, the forensic scientists when they analyzed it. It matched OJ's blood, but they had to draw blood from OJ in order to determine whether or not it was his blood that was at the scene of the crime. And some of the blood found at the scene of the crime had that preservative in it that they use. They were sloppy in the 90s, you know?
I don't know if they were sloppy. I feel like I had a friend in law school, or went to law school. She told me the way she described the OJ case was that it was like the most rigged one court case of all time or whatever. Where like OJ killed her, and they probably could have proved it, but for some reason the cops and everybody had engaged in so much malfeasance anyway. There was a snappy phrase to describe it. I don't remember, but it was like, yeah, it was really dumb. But I think it's pretty accepted that the cops or the investigators like did some bad shit when like they were doing evidence stuff. I haven't followed this in detail. I've just heard this a lot, but they probably didn't need to. But yeah,
Compared to now.
Well, there was no DNA evidence back then. You know, cops were there. There's always going to be a certain percentage of cops that just want to convict somebody regardless of the evidence. And if
wait, I'm so dumb. Hold on. There was no DNA evidence in 96? Is that when he killed her? When did OJ kill? Since 1995. Apparently the first time DNA evidence was used in 86? I don't know. Okay. Maybe it wasn't that common yet? That's possible. I don't know.
if they're, you know, in their mind, they believe someone's guilty, they'll do whatever they can, including planting evidence, I guess. At least that's allegedly. Not that I don't think he did it. I definitely think he did it. But I also think the cops planted evidence, which is probably at least partially why he got off, you know? I think the big reason why he got off was Rodney King, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Have you gone into the whole George Floyd story at all? Have you ever looked at what they actually did to him? It's a combination of things. Like what the cop did was horrible, but also he was dying.
No.
You know, most people probably, if they did that to you, you probably would have lived. You know, that guy.
But that doesn't matter.
He was fucked up, but that cop did lean on his neck, which is always interesting to see people try to minimize that. You know, I'm always you gotta be able to just say what it is.
Well, that situation can be ugly in a multitude of ways.
Yes.
Right. That's when things get, well,
hairy.
That's when it's very difficult to pick your moral pathway forward. All your choices are not good.
Yes.
Right?
Which is oftentimes the case when it comes to conflicts, right?
Yes.
Conflicts are very complicated, and people want it to be binary. They want there to be a good guy and a bad guy, and that's oftentimes not really the case.
Well, it's
So
hard to organize yourself for combat unless you are quite convinced that you're the good guy. So there's a default to that dichotomy that's a necessary part of, even standing your own ground, right? Because otherwise you get demoralized. And so I suppose people, when they're threatened, they default to a simple narrative, and because you can't defend yourself. In some ways, it's very hard to defend yourself, especially physically or militarily, without a pretty cut and dried narrative.
Well, especially military operatives, you know, you have to have a very your life and the people that you're with, their life depends on you not having any confusion about whether or not it's morally correct to be doing what you're doing. That's why they like to break it down to kill bad dudes. You know, kill bad dudes.
Right.
Real simple. Let's go.
Simple. True.
They tell us what to do, we do it. Which is what you want to stay alive. You want your teammates to stay alive. That's what you have to do.
Wow.
Yeah, well, you never know when doubt will cause a fraction of a second difference in reaction time.
Oh, yeah. That's always the thing with physical altercations with people, too. You know, oftentimes people get sucked into these things where they're not sure whether to act or not act, and that's when they get in trouble.
Right.
You know.
Wow.
Right. That's probably true in life. You don't want to oversimplify things, too, but once you've made a decision, that's when it's necessary to put doubts behind you, because otherwise you just act in half measures.
Yeah, and oftentimes you have to have done the wrong thing before, like failed to act or hesitated to act, and it cost you. And then you have to learn that lesson. It's very difficult to know that without experiencing mistakes. You know, you have to have failed to act and
He
then
says.
realize, oh, I should have done something there.
Yeah, well, I think that's partly too. One of the things that I often faced in my clinical practice and with the students that I mentored was this confusion about acting. I don't know what to do, so what should I do? Well, nothing. I'll wait around until I figure out what to do. It's like,
Right.
no, you should put together a bad plan and you should implement it, because even if you fail in the implementation, you'll gather information and then
Yes.
you can rectify the plan. And so,
Fuck me. Okay. I hate Jordan Peterson with a fiery fucking passion, okay? Because I genuinely believed, okay, I've said this a lot, and I will continue to say this. I genuinely believe that Jordan Peterson used to give, like, not even just good advice on things. It was insightful. It was actually really good advice. If you think I'm talking about you, I'm not talking about you, okay? But I have so many friends that I know who, and as I get older and I see them get stuck in these patterns, fall into this holding pattern of, I want to do a thing, but I don't know how to do it exactly, and I'm going to plan how to do that thing, and they get trapped in the planning phase forever, and then they never do anything. And what Jordan Peterson just said there is actually so fucking important. If you don't know what to do, there's two things you have to, there's one really important thing you have to recognize, okay? And it doesn't feel that way, but indecision is a decision, okay? Even if you don't want it to be, it is, okay? Time is always moving forward. So when you decide to do nothing or you can't make a decision, you are making the decision to do nothing. That's what's happening, okay? Because the opportunities are going away or the environment is changing, like other people are making decisions, you're getting left behind, whatever. You have to do something. Or if you do nothing, you're still doing something. You're just doing nothing. And that nothing is a something. If you really are like paralyzed and you don't know what to do and you're not sure, sometimes it's good to just do anything. Like if you don't know how you want to approach a project, if you don't know how you, whatever, just do anything. And once you do it, the information that you gather from doing that thing can be instructive. And after you gather some information and you start doing that particular thing, afterwards, you can have a, you might change and you might actually have a way to approach that problem in a way that, like, now you can do it going forward. This is vague, but like, so for example, let's say that you're not sure about college class or something, or you want to go back to school or something, and you don't know what to do, and you're sitting here and you're thinking about it, and you put it off year after year after year. It might be good to just sign up for like 2 fucking classes at a community college, okay? Even if it's not what you want to do, even if it's whatever, it's not a waste of time. Because what might happen is you go and you take a couple classes and you fucking hate it, and you remember how much you fucking hated school, and you're like, okay, I don't need to go back to school. I need to figure out something different. This sucks. Or maybe you go, you sign up, and you actually really like it. Or there's a couple topics that you're like, damn, I actually can really get back into the swing of this particular thing, and just by doing something, now you've added that information to your head, and now you're more easily able to act on it and make a decision in the future, you know, that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. It's really important to do things, though. It's so important to do things. Don't just not do anything because you're afraid of making the wrong choice or whatever. You should do something. What he just said there is very, very, very important.
staying in that malaise until you know what to do
That
makes
it will
you
never
get
come.
older and more miserable, and you gather no information along the way.
Yeah.
A bad plan is a good idea. Best, any plan is better than none. That's a good rule of thumb. And a bad plan can be incrementally improved.
Yeah.
Right? With
Right.
experience.
Right. He who hesitates is lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really difficult for young people. I think more so today than ever at any time in history, because the distractions are so many and they're so engrossing. If you get out of high school, you don't know what to do, and then you start playing video games and you're on social media, a day can slip by like that.
Yeah.
A day
A day, a year, yeah.
becomes a week, becomes a month, becomes a year, and before you know it, you're 30.
Yeah, right.
And you
That's
haven't
for
done
sure.
shit.
Yeah.
And that's really common. That's really common today. And I don't think we can ignore those factors, the factors of just engrossing distractions.
Yeah, well, and the algorithms optimize for short-term attention. Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
it's a weird thing, because you could imagine that you would want a machine that offers you what you want, right? Because you want ads that are targeted to you, because you want to see a bunch of ads that aren't relevant to you now
Sure.
and then, because maybe you'll learn something. And content, well, why not have a machine shovel the same sort of things that you are interested in at you?
Yes.
That's a kind of curation. The problem comes, and we haven't figured this out at all technically, and probably not
No,
psychologically.
I didn't mean to put that in
The
there.
problem comes in time frame, right? Because there's a big difference between what you might be interested in if you were diligently striving towards a long-term
my bad.
goal
No, I
that
just
required
screamed for no reason.
conscientiousness, and what's going to attract your attention right now, this moment.
Right.
And the thing about the algorithms is that they maximize for short-term attention.
Yeah.
And so basically they're actually
Algorithms.
optimizing for hedonism.
Yeah.
And then you might say, well, so what? Because you're getting what you want. Well, the problem with short-term impulsive hedonism is it doesn't play out well over any reasonable time span.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why you have to mature.
That's
which
why you
is
just keep
painful
finding new short-term hedonism.
and annoying, but absolutely necessary and much better than the alternative. The alternative is exactly that's Peter Pan, right?
Yeah.
30-year-old, I still haven't grown up, and
Yeah.
I'm a little past my shelf life now, too.
I think people are afraid of losing fun. They think that when you grow up, you lose fun. But it's silly. It's not true. You can grow up and still have fun. You just have to have discipline and prioritize your time.
Well, that's why Christ says to people that they have to become as little children, not stay. Right? You have to rediscover that.
Rediscover the joy of it. Yeah, but
Well,
also
kids are good for that too, aren't they? Because
Sure.
they teach you that again. You look at the world through eyes of memory by the time you're an adult. So the world loses its freshness. That's part of the world loses its freshness because you see your memories instead of the world.
Right.
And then kids come along and you think, oh yeah, that's really actually quite interesting. And they're so compelled by everything because their perceptions are so fresh that they share that with you, and that can help reawaken that spirit of childhood play, let's say. I've been thinking a lot about play in the last year or so.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time trying to take apart the causes of like truly pathological degeneration, right? On the sadistic side, on the criminal side, on
Thank
the
you.
totalitarian side.
Thank you.
Very curious about tyranny. And
So selfless.
it was very difficult for me to conceptualize the opposite of that as cleanly as I could characterize its presence. Like, what's the opposite of tyranny? It's not freedom, by the way. It's certainly not anarchic freedom. It's not hedonistic freedom.
Benevolence?
I think it's play.
Play.
I think it's play.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
that makes sense.
well, the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget, one of the things he pointed out was that play, so let's say play is the foundation of micro community, right? When you're a little kid, you play a game with another kid, and then if that works well, you inhabit a little dyadic community. You're both in it together. And then if it really works, you replicate that across time, and that gives you a friend. But play is it's very interesting psychologically and psychobiologically because it has to be entered in voluntarily. You can't force someone to play. And it's also
Why did they
motivationally
pick that up?
fragile. So mammals have a play circuit, and it can be disrupted by pretty much any other motivational or emotional circuit. So the circumstances have to be set up properly. Like the walled garden, you know that idea? The walled garden is a place that play can take place, like eternally, so to speak. And because it has to be undertaken voluntarily, it's the opposite of tyranny. And my wife and I have really started to...
What's the balance between the go do anything and patience is a virtue? These are not things that need to be balanced at all. What do you mean? Patience is a virtue has nothing to do with taking action or not, no?
to apply this in our marriage more consciously. You know, once I'd figured out this relationship, because I've been lecturing to people for a long time about how to conduct themselves in life so they don't become a tyrant or a handmaiden to the tyrants.
True.
Right? A silent handmaiden to the tyrants, let's say. And aiming at play. You know, when we walked in here today, one of the things we said was, let's have some fun, you know,
Yeah.
and I've been thinking this morning too about what attitude I should take coming in to talk to you, and there isn't a better attitude than play. And so, and I think it is because it's the antithesis of tyranny in particular. And then you were talking more about mature play, and that's that good, you know, that also makes sense. This is the issue with the idea that adulthood isn't any fun. It's like, well, do you want to play a simple game? Or do you want to play a really sophisticated game really well? Now, that's going to require some discipline and some training and some maturation, but the payoff is much higher. That's a good way to conceptualize marriage.
The highs are higher when you're successful.
Well, and also the people who have the most sex now are religious married couples.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny?
Which religion?
It's like, yeah, good question, Joe. Good question. Well, I guess in the West that would obviously be Christianity, but it's an interesting case example of the sorts of things we're talking about, because you can imagine at the dawn of the sexual revolution, when the birth control pill became prevalent, that the last hypothesis anyone would have possibly generated was that the cascading consequences of that over 50 years would be, well, radical increase in pornography use because sex has been made less dangerous by the pill, and that the people who were having the most sex would be religious married couples.
Right, but is that true? Because like pornography essentially was very difficult to acquire before the birth control pill was invented.
True.
Right,
But
you used to have to go somewhere to get the pornography. Isn't part of the excess use of pornography just the access is so instantaneous now?
Oh, definitely. But you could imagine, too, that you might have hypothesized that if the birth control pill took the threat...
The people having the most sex as being people in long-term married whatever bullshit shouldn't actually be that surprising as well, because typically when people have sex, it's because they're in relationships. That's like the typical case where people are banging each other. So the longer you spend in relationships, probably the more sex you're having, just on average.
Right out of sex, that pornography would be less necessary. But that didn't seem to work out.
Right.
So it's certainly the availability is... yeah.
We would never know, though, because the birth control was, when was it, 1960 something?
That's really when it
somewhere
started
around
to,
then?
yeah, when it started to ramp up, let's say.
It's so crazy because it completely changed the dynamic. Women could have sex for recreation.
That's crazy.
With people that they didn't even know and not have any consequences in terms of like having to carry that person's child. Whereas that was always a giant fear. If you're a woman, in the back of your head, every time you have sex, you possibly could be taking care of a child for the next 18 plus years.
Yeah, well, that...
Every time.
Right.
It's like this thing. This is a consequential thing where it's with a guy,
God damn.
it's like you have this biological imperative to spread your seed. But you're not thinking about making babies, right? You're thinking about sexual activity. When a guy's having sex, he's not thinking, I can't wait to make a baby. You're just thinking, boy, sex is going to be great. I'm excited. Oh, boy, that's fun. You're not thinking, I'm making a kid. Because that would make you hesitant, and nature's not interested in hesitation. Nature's like, no. Let's just make you dumb as fuck for about 20 minutes and focus on one goal.
So why did you get married?
Well, I love my wife. She wanted to get married. We had a child. It seemed like a good thing to do. It's like, at a certain point in time, making a baby is more of a commitment than getting married. You made a life, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the commitment of getting married seemed...
Right.
Of course. But it's also...
But why did you stay committed then before the marriage once you had a child?
I just
now,
think
you said
it's
you
a
loved
thing
your
to
wife.
do. I love her. It's a thing to do.
Focus on
it's
the love.
Life in raising a child became everything. It becomes a very different thing, right? I think I have a lot of friends who don't have kids, and I'm not the type of person that thinks everyone should have a kid. You know, I know a lot of people with kids, they do say that. I don't think everyone should have a kid. I think you should do whatever you want. I don't know how your brain works. I assume your brain works along similar lines with me. But there's a thing that happens when you do...
It's a scary thought, Joel.
Well, similar lines. I think we all share similar lines. There's an empathy that comes from having a child that's so different, and an understanding that we are all babies that grew up. We all start off as these bundles of potential and genetics, and then we're influenced by so many different things. There's so many different factors. But I used to think of people as being grown up all the time. And then when I had kids, I was like, oh, we're all just babies. We're all just babies that have just been alive for a long time. You know, everyone started out as a baby. And it just profoundly changed the way I interact with people. the amount of compassion I have for people, the amount of charity that I have for people, the charitable way in which I think about them when they do something or
So
they
charitable.
say something. I give people the benefit of the doubt way more. And Dave Chappelle said this to me once at the Comedy Store, and it was very profound. He said, having children didn't just change the amount of love I have, it changed my capacity for love. And I was like, ooh, that's it. You just nailed it. You just nailed it.
Damn.
You know, because there's private moments when you talk to people about their children, about having children and what that's like. It's a very psychedelic experience.
That would be another reason why the family with children is the foundation of the community, has to be the foundation of the community. I mean, it's kind of obvious from a biological perspective,
Yeah.
let's say. No children, no community. But there's no reason to assume that you wouldn't get radically better at something with necessity and practice. And if you're practicing loving your infant and your child, well, why wouldn't that generalize? Why
Sure,
wouldn't that
but-
capacity develop?
It's not like a practice. It's like an overwhelming desire.
Hold on, real quick. Bill Owens, the longtime executive producer of CBS News' 60 Minutes, is stepping down over concerns about editorial independence, according to an internal memo seen by Reuters on Tuesday. Owens' departure follows a months-long legal battle with U.S. President Donald Trump, who sued CBS in October over a 60 Minutes interview with his Democratic rival for the White House, former Vice President Kamala Harris. Earlier this month, the case entered mediation. Over the past months, it has also become clear that I would not be allowed to run the show as I always have run it, to make independent decisions based on what was right for 60 Minutes, right for the audience, Owens wrote in a note to the 60 Minutes staff. After defending the show, quote, from every angle, over time with everything I could, end quote, he is elected to step aside. Last week, Trump attacked 60 Minutes, saying it aired 2 inaccurate stories about him, and he pressed the Federal Communications Commission to take action. The FCC is already reviewing whether the broadcast violates news distortion rules. Though the agency is prohibited from censorship or infringing the First Amendment rights of media, broadcasters cannot intentionally distort the news. FCC Chair Brendan Carr said in February the commission was in the early stages of its review of the bid by CBS's parent company, Paramount Global, which is seeking agency approval for an $8.4 billion merger with Skydance Media. So corrupt. But, okay.
Desire that comes about, like, the love you have for your child is like, it's not like anything else. It's very different. It's very my friend Jim Brewer said this once. He said, when I had a child, that's when I really understood murder. Really understood, like, my capacity to defend my child is like, I never understood, like, how could somebody kill somebody before? He was like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. And, you know, that's real too. And that's also tribal, right? So it's not just your child. It's the child of everyone around you in your tribe. And then
Well,
you
Eric, welcome to
think
the Tier
that
5
you are
Suburb
being
Clubber.
invaded by an oncoming tribe. And genetics and history dictates you have to be insanely ruthless to fight off that tribe. There's no other way for survival, which is really wild, right? Because
Really, you need to have a child to understand murder? I mean, a child, or I would argue like a girlfriend or a loved one can do, a girlfriend or wife can do this if you're a guy. Or also a pet, I think, as cringe as it is and as cringe as pets are. It's what he's talking about is the idea of like, there are certain people that are close to you. Maybe there's a woman thing as well, or motherly might feel this thing, but especially as a man, there are people that are close to you that the idea of somebody hurting them or doing something to them for an unjustified reason, like just for the sake of cruelty, is a really infuriating thing. Especially when the perception is that that person can't defend themselves. So some men might feel this over some women, depending on sizes and everything and who's bullying who. You definitely get this feeling about your pet. Seeing somebody like kick an animal brings out this feeling in most people. And then when you have a child, like the idea of people hurting or bullying your child is like also, a very not good feeling.
those people have that same feeling towards their children. It's like that Sting line, if the Russians love their children too. This episode is brought to you by Paleo 100 visit your
wife.
first order.
But can't you feel this way about your parents too? I mean, you can, but adult humans just don't bring it out the same because we tend not to. I think that this is usually something that you feel for somebody that you intuitively feel is less physically capable or less capable in general. I mean, it can arise in those cases, like if you, especially if you have an older parent at like a nursing home or something, and they're being mistreated by staff, like you can get those feelings. But generally, other adults, or especially parents, just don't. They don't usually evoke those same feelings. Generally speaking, I think this is one of the reasons why kids and parents both have such a difficult transition into when the children grow up and become more capable, and especially as the adults get much older and start to need more help, the relationship between the parent and the child changes quite significantly, with some people having a really difficult time adapting to that change in relationship.
So that love that you talk about with regard to your wife, you know, I asked you a little bit about that. It's like, I've talked to people who they can't understand how.
Okay, I don't want to make this weird, but I've only heard this and I don't have the first-hand experience. Destiny, I would say adult men have an extremely strong protective instinct over their mother. I think the thought of someone hurting their mother would make most men snap. I'm very curious if you're from a single parent family, because I've heard that expressed for boys that grow up with single moms, that they develop that type of thing. I'm curious if that's where your background is, or if that you think that's more general, not like attacking you or anything. But
I've talked to people who they can't understand how someone could be with the same woman indefinitely, let's say. These are people who usually haven't been able to establish that within their own life. Mm-hmm. And of course, the price you pay, assuming it's a price, for foregoing all others is that, well, that's exactly it. It's a major sacrifice. And so what role do you think that love plays? Like, how do you conceptualize the relationship between that love that you described and that willingness to stay in a permanent relationship, and the willingness also to not pursue any other women?
that's how normal people feel about both of their parents or anyone they love. If that's what your answer to my question, you have no idea what I'm talking about. You either don't have a younger sibling, you don't have a pet, you don't have a child, you don't have a girlfriend that's of a significantly different size. If you just think, oh no, I'm protective of everybody, that's not, there's a different, I don't know how to explain it, but there is a different type of, because like if you see, the reason why I don't like parents as an example is because most of your life growing up, your parents are just significantly larger than you, and you're not in a situation where you're seeing your parents getting bullied. There is a special feeling, everybody knows this because you get it when you watch animals being abused. There's a different type of rage that you feel when somebody is being hurt, and you perceive that person as just being incapable of protecting or defending themselves. And it's a much different feeling than just like, oh, somebody I love is getting hurt. It's a feeling of like somebody that I care about who is incapable of protecting or defending themselves in this moment is being attacked in a way. It produces a different type of feeling. Or maybe it's the same feeling, but it's just far more intense. But like, I understand the desire to virtue signal on the, oh no, I feel this way for all of my friends and my mom and dad, and I love but it's a different type of thing.
How do you...
If you grow up in a healthy household, it's hard to imagine you would ever have that feeling for either of your parents, because your parents are generally always bigger and older and just not in those situations. You're not going to be in a situation where you're watching your parents getting attacked and shit all the time. That's why there's such a mindfuck feeling. If you see like mom and dad like crying over something, or there's like a big deal, it's like my parents aren't supposed to have that issue in most households. You're just not going to have that relationship with them.
The willingness also to not pursue any other women. How do you understand? How does that make itself manifest in your life? I mean, I presume that you had opportunities of all sorts.
I presume you do as well.
In principle, I suppose they don't seem to
You're a
come
hot
to me in a
professor
sense.
Can this level of feeling or understanding that can be reached without having a pet or child, etc.? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know anything in my life. The only thing in my life that has ever produced a feeling similar to this would be related to a child or like a girlfriend or whatever. I guess a pet if you want, but
Assume that you had opportunities of all sorts.
I presume you do as well.
In principle, I suppose they don't seem to
You're a
come
hot
to me in a
professor type
sense.
character.
And
Back in the
nothing-
day, guys like you would be banging their grad students. Not guys like you, but guys in your position.
Yeah, well,
right?
there were guys
Wasn't that always the thing? This is
yes.
a fascinating aspect of
I seem to
academia.
shut that off pretty much at the beginning.
Well,
Hey.
they seem to have completely stopped that. Like if you go back to Feynman and Oppenheimer and famous scientists were notoriously playboys, which is really interesting because it's like these wild, innovative people were essentially like intellectual rock stars, right? And then somehow or another that just got stopped. Like if you were a professor in the 1960s, like the girls would be wooing the professor. They would be excited. These 22-year-old graduate students would be so excited to be talking to this like incredibly famous intellectual. And they all, were ladies' men. Like Feynman was like famous for chasing skirts. That was like part of the thing. He does a lot of math and chases skirts. That is a giant distraction to people that are trying to get things done in life. And it's also a distraction from your own personal development, I think. I think you could be with the wrong person and want
Wow, the Mad Croc, thanks for the 5 memberships, buddy.
personal development, I think. I think you could be with the wrong person and want to be with other people, and that makes sense. But really what that is you should not be with that person anymore, which is unfortunately the case. Like, there's a lot of guys who wind up with really hot women who are out of their fucking mind, and a lot of women who wind up with really hot men who are not what they thought they were going to be, And if you find yourself in this situation where you're with this pathological person and you're trying to make it work and you realize at a certain point in time, like, I'm not going to make it work. Like, you have to be able to just, like, jump ship.
Is having a child something you think you'd naturally gravitate to? It's not something I feel strongly about personally. I'm going to give you a big ol' Evo psych take. I don't think humans have necessarily, although I guess you kind of feel it when you see cute babies. I don't think humans have a strong drive biologically, instinctually, to have children. Because I don't think we need it. You don't need that drive because you enjoy having sex and you like fucking. You see other people and you want to be near them. And as a result of like those two underlying drives, you'll have kids. And there's nothing else to do when you get older. You grow up and what are you going to do? You're going to fuck and you're going to have kids. I think that's one of the big reasons why today we have such an issue where you have people that aren't having families anymore is because now there's all these other things that are kind of competing for your time and attention in society now. And I just don't think, I think that in the past, just that natural, like, oh, we like to fuck and we like to be near others, that alone was enough to get people to have kids. And without that, I don't know if people will do it on their own, but I guess we'll find out.
That's why people are hesitant to get married.
Yeah, once you see a kid, it changes you. Once you see your kid, it changes you for sure. And I guess like spending time near family, children and stuff, people can get that feeling or something, but
that's what really dangerous about marriage. It's not like being with one person you really love being with. Like, I really love being with my wife. She's fun. Like, we have date nights all the time. We have a lot of fun. We really do. It's enjoyable. But
why did you decide to set up date nights? How did you go about that? I mean, I know.
Yeah, somebody brought that up in Kick Chat. I don't know. I just want to comment because I don't know. You always hear like meme things about like old scientists or well-respected researchers or people being ladies' men. I don't know if it was so much the case that like they were actually rock stars back in the day, and so grad students legit wanted to hook up and fuck them, or if it was just like an accepted practice that like if you want to make it anywhere in your academic career, you better be willing to fuck this guy. I don't actually know what the thing is there, so I would be kind of careful speculating on that, but who knows.
Well, that's personal, and I don't want all the gory details, let's say.
No, it's really simple. We just enjoy hanging out together. We have a lot of laughs. And so we just said, like, it's kind of important because I'm so fucking busy. So
does it really change you, or does it just make you feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility? Listen, just being totally honest, right? Nathan, I love you. I don't know if he's here. Nathan was an oops baby. I never planned on having a kid, or at least not at that stage of my life. Me and Rachel had made plans that basically, like, once he was born, I'd probably, pay child support and whatever. I don't think I was ever even intending to see him. And even me being at the hospital for his birth, I think was an accident. I don't know why I was there. Something like I just happened to be in the area when she had went into labor and I'd stop by or whatever. That was my feeling basically on going into it. But I think when you actually see like a baby comes out and it's like half your shit, it's like an actual like thing that you have created with your body, and he's there and he's like alive and he's crying and you felt him, not as much as the woman has, but they kick, you could like touch the belly and there's like a little kid in there doing shit. As somebody who I have no attachment to like family shit ever, I'm the least sentimental person in the fucking world. Trust me. I think it's a transformative experience. it's a feeling unlike anything you'll ever feel. And I'm a guy. I don't have to carry it. I can't imagine for a woman. That feeling's got to be multiplied by like a billion. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a huge feeling. It's the only thing in your life you'll ever create that's like an actual creation from your body to like into the world. You've like made a human being. It's a pretty substantial thing, you know?
All the gory details, let's say.
No, it's really simple. We just enjoy hanging out together. We have a lot of laughs. And so we just said, like, it's kind of important because I'm so fucking busy that we schedule time that's just
Seeing my baby did nothing for me, LOL. Love the dude, but there was no, oh my God, an obsessed moment for me. Oh, well, maybe it's because I'm a parent.
enjoy hanging out together. We have a lot of laughs. And so we just said, like, it's kind of important because I'm so fucking busy that we schedule time that's just unavoidable. Like this is what we're doing. We're going to do this.
Yeah,
and then
I
we
do
it.
that
And
with
then,
Tammy, too.
Yeah.
We've done that for like 30 years.
I think most married couples will tell you that that's important. Most married couples will tell you that that's kind of the secret. And it's the secret is
it's
like...
also the best thing, as well as being the secret.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Like if the person that you're with is fun. That's the real problem is sometimes people they pick people that are hot. That's it. You know, hot and willing and nice enough. Mm-hmm. Nice enough to be around. Then you deal with all the other crazy nonsense and you're setting yourself up for... I've had many friends ruin their fucking lives. And then they go through divorces, and you've said this best, that one of the things that women are very good at is reputation destruction. Mm-hmm. I have seen that happen. So imagine you are legally entangled with someone who at one point in time you loved intimately, and now that person is trying to destroy every aspect of your life.
I mean, is it really just women that do that? I feel like everybody can go in when we're talking to... I guess it really depends on who is getting divorced or for what reason, but...
And you have to pay for their lawyers. Mm-hmm. So you have to pay...
Well, that's only if you're the one that made all the money and the other person didn't. I think it's also significantly different too, though, because women share so much more as well. Like, I don't know how to explain this, but if you're a guy, I just don't think men share much about their partners or their relationship. We just don't. Guys aren't usually like, oh, like my wife was so sweet today and she did this and blah. Like men just don't have those conversations. Whereas like women are like, oh my God, like check out this like picture of my husband's dick that he sent me with like all 10 of their friends. They're like, oh, look at this. And like, yeah, we all do this all the time and it makes me feel like this. And we go all blah, blah, blah. So like when the relationships go sour, I feel like for guys, it's more just like, oh yeah, we divorced. She's a bitch. Fuck that. It's whatever. But like women have so much access to each other's personal lives and relationship information, everything. They're probably more likely to have stronger feelings about it too. Yeah, I don't know. I think we do communicate in different ways. So I guess like in that sense, a woman could be more reputationally destructive, but I think it's because they tend to talk about this stuff more anyway. I think, yeah.
For the general of the army that's trying to destroy your kingdom, and I've seen this happen to many of my friends, and that is why people are afraid of marriage. That's why people are afraid of commitment. Because the disastrous implications of like what can happen if it goes sideways.
I hate these types of conversations because if you really do believe that like we have an issue with people like getting in relationships or talking to each other, whatever. If you really believe that these are issues that we need to address, this is bullshit. There's not all of these men that have access to all of these women, and they're like, God, you know, I know so many great women, and we get along so well, and it's like, but I'm so worried she's gonna take everything and like this is not a real problem. This is not a real thing that like this is the thing that's keeping people from getting married. Is the like bullshit? I don't believe that. And even if a guy says it, I wouldn't believe it. You have other things at play or other types of commitment issues at play here. If this is seriously the thing that's preventing you from getting married, it's bullshit.
Like, what can happen if you wind up hating each other? And what can happen if you just lie to yourself and you trick you? Like, some of the hesitation that I had for getting married is most of my friends that got married when I was young all went through horrible divorces. When I was on news radio, Dave Foley, Stephen Root.
Every male friend group I've ever been in shared their girlfriend's nudes, even in high school. That sounds really weird. I can't think of a single guy, but maybe it's totally different types of friend groups. I feel like most men would be horrified to like talk about if you're just like a hookup or something, maybe, or like a fling, maybe. But like I can't imagine like a man being like, oh, check this like fucking pic out that my wife sent me. I think most men wouldn't communicate that way. 90% of women do communicate that way. Where they'll just like, they're like, that shit is wild. But it might be different groups of people. But it might also depend also on like the type of relationship. Like if you were telling me that people did this in like high school and college, then that could be a thing maybe because the relationships aren't as serious. Or if it's like flings or just hookups, sure. But
and Phil Hartman, we're all going through it in different levels of psychosis. Obviously, Phil Hartman's being the worst because his wife shot him when he was leaving her, by the way. He decided to leave her, and he tried to leave her a few times, and she shot him in his sleep, and then she shot herself. It's a horrible, horrible story. But Stephen Root went through it, and they'd confide in me. I'd be like, oh, Jesus Christ. The amount of money these women were trying to get from them when they knew that they couldn't afford this. So one of the dirty tricks that will happen with divorce lawyers, with people that are on sitcoms, is when you get on a sitcom, if you're an actor and you get on a sitcom, it is the most stable job, the greatest job in show business for a lot of them. Because you're going to get a steady check. You're going to do 24, maybe 26 episodes a year. You're making
like movie people, if you look at their pay and shit, bro, a lot of your top tier streamers are making more than probably half of like A-list Hollywood celebs. Like it's pretty crazy. Like a Hollywood celeb that's like an A-lister might do a couple movies that pay a decent amount, but there might not be a lot of work for like a year or two. But I guess you're making money in other way through like endorsements or sponsorships or, commercials or whatever else. But the sitcom jobs are nice because like Rogan says, yeah, you can like you can crush, 50, 100K an episode or more depending on how popular the show is. I don't know how common it is, but they used to do royalties. So you would just get residual paychecks every time these things are like sold or aired on network broadcast stations and shit. Like
making more money than you've ever made in your whole life. But then you get divorced. So what happens is it gets set up where your ex-wife wants a percentage of what you're making at this very unrealistic level where you're never going to achieve this again. And for Dave Foley, it was so bad that at one point in time, I don't believe he was allowed to go back to Canada. I don't know if that's changed, but the judge literally told him, when he told the judge, like, I don't have that kind of money anymore. I don't have the potential for earning. I was on a hit sitcom, like not even a hit sitcom, but
didn't you say that the streamers, are miserable? I don't know if a lot of actors are miserable per se. Because I think for acting, it sounds weird to say this, but I think streamers are exposed to more publicity than actors are. Actors don't have to engage with fans or public forums ever. And as a streamer or YouTuber, like comment sections and communities are kind of part of your job. So you kind of have to,
I was on a sitcom anymore. I don't have the potential for earning. I was on a hit sitcom, not even a hit sitcom, but I was on a sitcom on NBC, paid a lot of money, and that was the only time I made that kind of money. The judge said to him, your obligation to pay has no relation to your ability to pay. That's Canadian judges for you. Just insane. And,
those are words you never want to hear even once in your life.
I love him. So I was going through this pain, not like he was, but just like, oh my God. So there's three people that I was very close to. And then most of the other people that I knew. I knew so many people.
Listen, I can appreciate the man's perspective here, and it sucks to have to pay a bunch in alimony or child support. Like, it can be stressful for sure. But I mean, I will say that like the reason why alimony and stuff exists is because women are making huge sacrifices to empower that man to continue to work while having a family. And if you're going to be the type of guy who's constantly saying to women, like, hey, it's your job to have families, it's your responsibility to take care of children, like, it's not your responsibility to be in the workplace and have a job. If you're going to say that, then that's fine. But then as a man, your role is, well, listen, if shit gets fucked and the relationship ends up splitting up, you have to continue to provide financially for this woman because you told her to abstain from pursuing financial goals. And now she's no longer without you as a man. And because of that, she has nothing in her life financially. So, of course, you kind of have to chip in. Like, yeah.
Fortunately, my mother and my stepfather have a great relationship, and they have for a long time. So I had that modeled. Like, they were always very close. And they didn't fight, which is really nice. It was really nice to have that as a model. You know,
Right.
like where I realized, okay, it's not everybody's not at each other's throats all the time, and some people actually do enjoy spending time together.
Is alimony contingent on kids? Don't women without kids get alimony? You can. I think it just depends on how much the both partners earn and like who's making sacrifices or whatever to have that earning. I don't know why. I think you deserve as a man to lose everything. If you marry a woman who is a stay-at-home whatever and doesn't work, and you don't have kids, I don't know what the fuck that is. It's a stay-at-home girlfriend? Why? Why would you even do that? That just sounds cringe as fuck to me, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not traditional enough or something. But relationships with a woman doesn't work if you don't have kids? What the fuck is the point?
You know, Tammy and I on the tour, she started to introduce me 2 years ago and to talk about some of the things we're doing in the family, some of our family business, talk about Peterson Academy, talk about essay. And so she'd go out on the stage. And
Was that the first time she had ever gone on stage in front of, you do enormous crowds.
Yeah, well, so first of all, she did that. And then we replaced the business discussion, because we were just doing an update about the family, you know, and so she'd do that. We replaced that with ads, and then she started to talk. She talked about the rules, say, in 12 Rules for Life, or some of the religious things I've been dealing with lately, and she'd relate that to something in her own life. And then she does the Q&A at the end of the lecture. And part of that was just, she was along with me, and part of that was Michaela was introducing me for a while and then had to go back to her work. And so we slotted Tammy in because it seemed like a good business decision. But one of the things we figured out very quickly that was really a shock to us was that people really liked, especially the Q&As, because what people will offer their questions electronically on this platform called Slido, which is a very good platform for such things. And then they could upvote the questions, and then Tammy would sort them and ask me questions kind of from the top down that were thematically relevant to the lecture that I had given. But we found very quickly that people really liked that because they hadn't seen a couple engage in civilized discussion ever. Seriously, like
Yeah,
it was
there's a
really
lot of that out there.
It was really shocking, Joe. Like, you know, I was shocked when I first started touring by how demoralized people were. Like that was really striking and painful to see that on such a mass scale, and then also to see how little encouragement it took to have a really major effect. I mean, there's a positive aspect to that too, but there's also a tragic aspect. It's like, you mean you just need to have some encouragement and that was enough and you never got that, like even once? That's rough when you see that in thousands of people.
Right.
And it was the same thing. We found it was the same thing with regards to seeing a functional couple, at least even that model. Because, you know, Tammy asked me questions and she thinks about the questions, and then sometimes she comments, but not that much. But she actually listens to the answers and she wants to hear the answer. And so, and that dynamic is being played out on stage, and people found that very heartening. And well, that shows you, well, you said, you know, yourself, and this is why I brought it up, because you had the example from your stepfather and your mom of this long-term relationship that worked. I mean, how the hell do you orient yourself if you haven't seen that anywhere?
Right. And then you consider relationships just like all the bad ones, and like you're going to be burdened and locked into that. Did you ever see that video where Alec Baldwin and his wife are on the red carpet and they're being interviewed and they're asking them questions, and the wife starts talking and Alex chimes in about something, and she said, "You're not talking, I'm talking. When I'm talking, you're not talking." On camera. And you watch this, you're like, yo, that's what everyone's scared of.
Right.
That's
right.
what
Definitely.
you want to
that
talk about, like
competition.
tyranny. The tyranny of being trapped in a relationship like that is like, ugh. And sometimes one person is so overbearing that the other.
Was it actually that bad, or was this like a jokey thing that they're taking away out of context? I'm curious. I don't know.
Person just sort of submits to it.
Yeah,
right?
Jamie, pull up the clip.
And then you just like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. And so then you're just trapped, and this person's insulting you and humiliating you publicly. That was the case with Phil Hartman. I got to see that. We would all go, like, we went to a party once, and I remember she was talking about ex-boyfriends that she loves pickup trucks because her ex-boyfriends had pickup trucks and they would climb into the back of these pickup trucks. And I was like, what the fuck?
Where does this thing of like the wife's always right come from? It confuses the fuck out of me. I think in old nuclear family stuff, prior to when women started working a ton, I think basically the man worked and the wife was kind of like the master of the household. So as soon as the guy is home, for better or for worse, once you're at home, like basically what the wife says goes. And then there's a lot of jokes, positive or negative, about those types of stereotypes, basically.
But she was doing it on purpose to like make him squirm and make him uncomfortable. And she would say things like talk about how he's old. Oh, he's old. He doesn't, he doesn't like to do anything. It was just public humiliation in front of friends, where you're in this like arena where he can't say anything.
Yeah.
He can't just go, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, why are you talking to me like that? Like, why are we doing this?" He can't do that because he's public. And he's out with us.
Maybe he should do it anyways.
Probably should do it anyways.
Yeah, probably.
But we're all out, and Phil was all about like appearances. How things looked.
Right.
One of the things that he was afraid of with getting married was that he was just starting to break into films, and a lot of the films that he was doing were very like family-friendly films, and it helped that he was a family man. If he was
right, so he had an act he had to sustain too.
He had an image, right, and this was critical in Hollywood. Like they had ideas of who you were. Okay, you're a family man. Okay, good. And so if you have this radical change in your life where no longer you're a family man, and if you want to be honest about it and you want to say I was in a toxic relationship and some of it was me and some of it was her and this is what happened, like, whoa, now you're opening up the world to this big can of worms. Better to keep that can sealed.
Yeah, well, it's generally better not to have your fights in public, and it's certainly better. I've been thinking about this commandment to honor your mother and father, and I've been thinking about what that means. I read this book called Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt, and Frank had a really alcoholic father, like an Irish alcoholic father back in the 40s. Oh yeah, and he drank every cent the family had, and they lived in terrible poverty.
Wow,
and his
disease.
sister died, and like it was rough. But he said his father was often sober in the morning, and he established a relationship with like good morning sober father, and kind of put alcoholic, drunken, nighttime father in a different bin, and he could.
My boyfriend in the morning when he wakes up and hasn't solo queued yet, versus my boyfriend after a night of solo queue.
He could get the benefit of having a father in consequence of that, and that honoring. That's also something that you want to do within a marriage, right? Because your wife is your friend and your lover, but she's also your wife, and you're her husband, and that means that a part of keeping that marriage working is honor, and part of the honor.
What is this Shannon Sharp stuff? Should I know anything about this? Some court stuff coming out? What is this?
To my family, friends, supporters, and colleagues, I want to speak to you directly and from the heart. This is a shakedown. I'm going to be open, transparent, and defend myself because this isn't right. This is all being orchestrated by Tony Busby, who has targeted Jay-Z. Tony Busby targets black men, and I believe he's going to release a 30-second clip of a sex tape that tries to make me look guilty and play into every stereotype you could possibly imagine. That video should actually be 10 minutes or so. Hey Tony, instead of releasing your edit, put the whole video out. I don't have it, or I would myself. You know what happened, and you're trying to manipulate the media. The encounter in question took place during the day at her invitation, and now that appears to be a deliberate setup, coordinated by Gabby, also known as Carly on OnlyFans.
Jesus.
Gabby and Tony Busby want $50 million. What they're getting is sued for defamation and trying to take me down. My career is all about real talk and honesty. I know my family and fans know exactly what this is about.
Damn.
And I'm going to be out there telling you whatever I need to say, just like I always do. I love all you guys. Thanks.
All right. Based.
Is that you don't do that sort of thing in public.
Right.
Right.
You
Because,
don't humiliate each
and
other.
And
you
that's,
don't fight
that's,
in public.
Well, that's also in some ways independent. In a way, it's independent of who your wife or husband is. It's like, you could imagine two people fighting in public and one of them or both of them really deserving to have that fight as people. But then to keep the marriage intact, you have to remember, well, this is my wife. She's not just my friend. She's not just someone I know. She's my wife. And we shouldn't be doing primate dominance hierarchy maneuvering in public. We shouldn't be competing for power because that's going to destroy the marriage.
Yeah.
And so that's part of that honoring, I think, is to...
Well, fuck destroying the marriage. It's also just kind of like fucking rude. What the fuck? Hello?
To remember the role and to keep it, well, sacred is really
Well, I
right,
think-
sacrosanct.
Here's another one. Don't ever insult each other, even though you want to. Like, you want to, like, be mean sometimes. Like, people get mean to you. You want to be mean back. I don't do that with my friends, so I don't do that with anyone else. I don't want to do that. That's why I don't do it online. I don't get involved in these, like, hissy-pissy fits online, particularly on Twitter. I just don't think
The prime place for such things.
that's all it is. First of all, again, as someone who looks at everyone like a child or like a baby, I'm not angry that people do that. I understand the appeal of it. If I was 15 and Twitter was around, I would be tweeting at every fucking celebrity saying, you're a loser, jump in front of a bus. I would say things just to try to get a reaction out of them. I think a lot of kids do. I think a lot of people don't feel like they have a voice, and one way to be heard is to be insulting, and one way to heard is to be negative. If you look at the majority of discourse on social media in regards to hot button issues, it's disrespectful. It's contentious, it's shitty and insulting, and I've decided, like, over time in my life to not do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in that kind of conflict. Like,
Can you put up power poles in space? I just realized if I want to run like a wire to a place, can I put up power poles to run wires?
see real conflict all the time. As an MMA commentator, you know, I see the most violent legal conflict other than war all the time. That's conflict. That's like real conflict and resolution and, you know, purposeful, agreed upon conflict. Like regular, like back and forth insult. Wouldn't it be better to figure out what you agree and disagree on and why and talk? Like, why can't we all figure out how to do that? That should be a discipline you learn at an early age. Most of the issues that people have, if the person comes at you insulting and aggressive, either that person is ignorant or they're playing a game, okay? And the game is to get your emotions up, to get you
Yeah, this is one of those situations. We're getting into that area that I said before where, oh my God, you're right. Lamps would be sick. How can you say all of this stuff and then support Donald Trump? What's going on here? What's happening here?
reactive and to be reacting to them instead of acting. The game is like if someone's hyper aggressive in a fight, the game is to put you on the defensive so that they don't, like, the best defense is a good offense. You learn that early on in fighting. So you learn that you can be very offensive and then the person never has a chance to get their game going. And that's the case with conversations too. So there's a gamesmanship to this kind of communication where it's not just communicating. It's communicating, but it's essentially intellectual one-upsmanship and sparring. You're sparring. You're scoring points. You're trying to dunk on each other. And I get that. I've done that before. I've engaged in it. It's never satisfying. It always feels gross. Even if you win, it's gross. Like I've said this before, like, even like publicly things that I felt like I had to do, like the Carlos Mencia conflict that I had way back in 2007 where I accused him of stealing material and it became this viral video and then a bunch of other comedians jumped in and we all agreed there was a real problem. It was a real problem because he was very famous and he was being protected by these agencies who were profiting off of him being famous. They didn't want that train to stop.
Oh, no.
I still, to this day, wonder if I would ever do that again because the negativity that came my way from people that were fans of his was it's so overwhelming if you're paying attention to it. It's like, what did I open up? Like, ugh. Even though I knew it was necessary. Like, what? And that is also why people are negative because they want to stop you from engaging in conflict that's going to hurt them. You know, so they try to hurt you as much as possible. So you're like hesitant to do it. I don't want to wade into those waters. Ooh, it's dangerous, filled with sharks.
Well, you could imagine, maybe.
What could we imagine?
I think this is worth delving into in some depth. You could imagine that there's various ways of attaining status, renown, reputation. Status isn't exactly the right word because reputation is better, because you can have a reputation that you deserve, right? And so people do work for reputation, and all things considered, that's a good thing.
Earned reputation.
Earned
is the
reputation.
best. Yeah.
Earned reputation.
Where
Earned
someone's
valid
truly
reputation.
Yes, I got your email about espressos. Thank you.
unique.
I got
with
it.
Jordan, that guy, that's a unique human being, and that's a real reputation.
Right,
Yeah, that
right.
kind.
Okay.
That's
so,
what people want.
Right, right. And it's also, there isn't anything more valuable that you can have than that. Not even close. This is why, by the way, this is very cool. It's a bit of an aside, but it's worth bringing up. In the Gospels, Christ tells people to store up treasure in heaven where it doesn't rust, where the thieves can't steal it. That's reputational treasure. Right? So the idea is that if you conduct yourself impeccably, you'll develop a storehouse of reputation that will withstand all catastrophe.
Wow.
There's no place you can put your wealth that's more effective than that. It's the least violatable place, and that's right. It's right.
Right.
And so, but the problem is, and this is a really tricky problem, and you're touching on it, is that
What's the
the
problem?
reputation game can be gamed. Okay, so when your reputation rises, your serotonin levels rise, and that makes you less sensitive to negative emotion and more sensitive to positive emotion. So that's a really good deal. And what that also means is that there's a high psychological benefit to status increase, reputational increase, and a real cost to reputational decrease. So that's partly why people don't like losing face, for example, because their emotions dysregulate. Okay, so now the best way to play that game is to establish a genuine reputation. And the best way to do that, you've done this, by the way. I figured out this year in my lectures that I'm always trying to answer a question on stage. So that's a quest. And I'm bringing the audience along on a quest. And it's a real quest because I'm actually trying to figure something out. And I do that in real time. And that's a very different game. That's a very different conversational game than the status battle game.
Yes.
Right? Because I could come on here, I don't know if it would work, but I could come on here and I could try to show that I was smarter than Joe Rogan. Now, I've watched you, and that's a very difficult thing to pull off. But hypothetically, that could be my aim, and I could play gotcha questions, and I could lead you into places.
The problem is that wouldn't work because I'm willing to accept that you're smarter than me.
Or that. Sorry.
First of all, I talk to a lot of people that are smarter than me, and I like it. It's enjoyable. I don't ever feel uncomfortable talking to people that are smarter than me.
Yeah.
I want to know some things that they can tell me on certain things. I want to educate myself. I want to see how their mind works. I want to be blown away. I don't want to compete with them intellectually. There's times in my life where I would have fallen into that trap.
Yeah.
I think
I think that's what's made. Well, I think that's also what's made you popular and a force for good. Is that you are on a
Holy fuck,
quest.
this is
And
boring.
that quest, the consequence
Did they talk about anything interesting here, or what else is there to watch?
of that quest, if undertaken properly, is reputational enhancement. And people who can't or won't do that, they default to power games. And the part of it, and that's the default to power.
Right.
But it's worsened with social media.
Absolutely.
Because
I linked to
if
timestamps.
you're
Tell me again.
If
what
you
are they?
meet someone and they're playing a power game with you, you can just decide not to have anything to do with them anymore, or you can put a stop to it if you need to. But on social media, you can't because they're distant from you, and they're often also anonymous. And so they can play power games to enhance their reputational status falsely with no consequences.
Jeez, that's
and
crazy.
the social media is rife with that, and it's really a problem. Like, I think that virtualization has enabled the psychopaths.
Not the
Without a doubt.
psychopaths.
Yeah, well,
Without a doubt.
that's a terrible thing because the psychopathic types, they're always the death of everything. Like, I'm seeing this come up on the right now. So imagine.
Okay. 1 hour, 2 minutes.
Called the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. We had our second convention in November, which went very nicely, by the way.
So you're doing like a positive counter to the World Economic Forum.
Well, we have some rules.
Oh,
and
no.
one rule is you don't use force or fear,
Wow.
right? Use invitation.
Wow.
So can I tell you a story about
Please
that?
do.
Please.
do.
Okay, so I've been touring about this new book of mine, right? We Who Wrestle with God, and it's
We who wrestle with God.
I've been lecturing about lots of the things I know, but I've been using biblical stories mostly to
Wow.
provide an analytical frame, because that's what stories do. They provide a frame. And there's a great story in the continuing Exodus story, the story of Moses and the Israelites, where
What a great
Moses
story,
has
by the
led
way.
his people away from the tyrant and away from their own slavery, because there's a dynamic in that story between those two things. No tyrants without slaves.
Okay.
Or you might say no tyrants without willing slaves. And so the Israelites have to get away from the tyrant, but then it's across the Red Sea of chaos and blood and into the desert for 40 years. You don't escape from the tyrant if you're a slave without paying a price, and maybe for 3 generations. It's rough. So Moses is trying to get these people to stop being slaves and to take responsibility
Wow.
so they don't need a tyrant. And so he's kind of got there, and they're on the edge of the promised land, right? And so they're almost at the end of their voyage, and they run out of water. They're still in the desert. They run out of water, and they get all whiny and bitchy about the fact that they had to go across the desert, and
LOL.
it was way better under the tyrant, and that Moses is nothing but a corrupt patriarch, and he's
True.
only power mad, and
True.
they foment some rebellion. And anyways, it's a pretty ugly situation. And the Israelites go to Moses and they say, look, we're really starving. We're thirsting for water. We're going to die. Do you think you can have a chat with God, see if he'll do something about this? And God tells Moses
Listen to this, guys.
to go to some rocks in the desert.
And he says, just say some nice words and listen to, look at what Moses does. Look at this guy acting out.
And to ask them to bring water forth. And so he goes with his people to these rocks, and instead of asking, he takes
He busts his pimp cane out.
this staff of his. The staff is a really important thing. It's like your staff if you have an organization, same derivation. But it's also the magic wand of Gandalf. It's the flag you plant in new territory. It's the tree of life. It's the
Oh, yeah.
living tradition that has a spirit inside it, and that's a serpent, and that's the serpent that eats all the serpents of the
For sure.
Egyptian
Oh, yeah.
tyrants, magicians. That's the staff. It's his rod of his authority. And
Oh,
he,
yeah.
instead of asking the rocks, he hits them twice with the
Unreal.
staff. So he forces them. And God tells him that in consequence of that, number 1, he's going to die. And number 2, he's not going to get to the promised land.
Damn.
Right. So there's this insistence. It's really interesting. Well, it's a crucial insistence, and it's very important in this time, I think, to understand what this means. So Moses is a leader. He's the archetypal leader, and he realizes his responsibility in the encounter with the burning bush, which is something that attracts his attention, that he takes with great seriousness, and that transforms him. And so then he becomes the leader who stands up against the tyrant and frees the slaves and takes them through chaos into the desert. And his temptation as leader is to use force. So when he's a young man, for example, he kills a Egyptian aristocrat who was tormenting a Hebrew slave, and that's why he has to
crazy.
leave Egypt. He's tempted by power because he's a leader. And then at the end, even though he's done all these things, he's
fucks
been
him.
an upstanding man and gone beyond his call of duty. And he's right at the point where he attains victory, right, to enter the promised land. And he uses force once. When God tells him to use invitation, to use his words, the logos, to use words, to use invitation. And that's enough so that he's dead. So is his brother Aaron. That's his political arm. And he doesn't enter the promised land. And then in the Gospels, of course, Christ forgoes power altogether. The temptation in the desert, one of the 3 temptations is the temptation for use of power. So one of the things that maybe we could conclude from all this, given the context of what you said, is that you can tell the tyrants, they use fear and compulsion, and they don't use invitation. So one of the rules we put together for ARC was invitation only. Play, we're going to do this playfully,
Yeah.
and
No.
we're not going to use force or fear.
Don't
ever.
rape them with
We
your
have to use
play.
invitation.
True.
And so I don't know what you think about that. It's the distinguishing characteristic between the wannabe tyrants and the true
My
leaders.
God,
the
how
true
profound.
leaders say, here's an offer. Would you accept this of your own free will? And the tyrants say, the apocalypse is coming, and everything, and we are allowed to do everything to forestall it.
Right.
Right, including control you and everything that you do.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how they get people to fall in line. They fall in line through fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, fear and force. It's like
Yes.
also, you have to do this because the apocalypse is looming, which is always in a way true.
Always.
There's always an apocalypse of one form or another looming. The question is, what do you do about it?
Well,
And terrify
depending on where
people
you
and compel
live,
them.
anywhere in the world right now, right? You might be experiencing the apocalypse right now if you live in Gaza.
Yeah,
you
well,
might be experiencing the apocalypse right now if you're in Yemen, if you're a Houthi, right?
This was supposed to be about who timestamped this? Environmental narratives and fear of change. Oh no, wait. The vaccine debate and public reaction. How is that?
The
what this is
world is
about?
always coming. Right, and for you, for me, for
everybody.
Yeah, right. So you can always look into the future and conjure up an apocalyptic scenario. And
How do we say this and not apply this to the Republican Party that basically runs exclusively off of apocalypses? The immigrant, the caravan is coming. The Democrats are coming for all of your freedoms. The rest of the world is abusing us. So we have a national security about fentanyl. We have a national security about immigration. We're being invaded by gangs. The rest of the world has been taking advantage of us. Now we have a national security on trade. Like, how is this not every single thing the Republican Party messages on?
maybe even that in itself isn't a sin, although I think it is. There's another, but if you yet then turn to fear and compulsion as your means of governance, then you're a tyrant. I don't care what your excuse is. It has to be invitation.
Wait.
As your means of governance, then but in itself isn't a sin, although I think it is. There's another, but if you yet then turn to fear and compulsion as your means of governance, then you're a tyrant. I don't care what your excuse is. It has to be invitational.
That
This is a transformation of the I forget the names of the syllogisms, of the Aquinas syllogisms for the proof of God. But it's the is it the cosmological argument? I don't remember. But there's one where it's like everything had to have a beginning. The universe had a beginning, therefore, fucking somehow God. I don't even remember the formal syllogism. But it's one of the ones that you can theoretically spin back on a religious person and go, oh, okay, well, why can't I say like the universe is infinite? And then you have a dialogue back and forth about like, well, the universe can't be infinitely long, or it couldn't have always been there. And it's like, well, why not? It's like, okay, because it can't. Okay, fine. And they'll be like, well, God was infinite. It's like, well, why is God infinite? Well, he just is. Why can't I say the universe is infinite? You can say God is infinite. Back and forth like that to show that you're in the same position. He just said that you can't rule by fear or compulsion. It has to be free or whatever. What was Moses' punishment for not just speaking to the rock instead but tapping on it? What was it? It was death and not being able to enter the lands of Israel. Like, damn, bro. I mean, it seems like God rules that way and it worked pretty well for him.
As your means of governance, then you're a tyrant. I don't care what your excuse is. It has to be invitational.
That's when it gets scary, when you see governments telling people that they have to fall in line, or these are our horrible consequences.
Like governments, those can be horrible things depending upon the type of government. But if you live in a democracy, then it feels totally okay. Like governments should be telling us to some extent what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. That's what we vote for, right? We all agree that you should be able to murder people or steal from people. It's totally fine to have those restrictions or limitations on things.
For you not agreeing to what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you don't do this, you're a part of the problem.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and if the apocalypse that's generated in that way is of sufficient magnitude, there's no limit to the amount of power that can be exerted.
Right.
Because obviously the rationale is there.
They have to do it, right? Like this is the rationale to stop Trump, right? You're trying to stop Hitler.
Right. Well,
no matter what.
It's also, I
First
think,
Amendment, use the law, use lawfare.
Use whatever.
Yeah.
Use whatever. This is one of the things that worries me about Canada at the moment. No, I know when we talked a couple of weeks ago, I expressed my concern about what was happening in Canada.
Doesn't look good.
Doesn't look good.
I read...
Doesn't look good. You're such a fucking conservative dick suck now that now you want the conservatives in Canada to win? How are you supporting conservatives around the world? Has Joe Rogan had his like AFD suck off fest yet? Like what the fuck?
Arnie's book, Values, I read it twice, and I understood it. And Carney says in that book...
What does he say?
Well, he says he's an advocate of centralized planning, ESG. He was a huge...
Carney, the neoliberal, is an advocate of central planning? If you don't know, central planning in the socialist sense, and that is what you mean when you talk about central planning, is the idea that the government or some central body can dictate your economic inputs and outputs, meaning they'll tell you how many economic inputs, how many engineers are we going to have, how many doctors are we going to have, how many of these things are we going to order from, some other country as intermediary products? And then the outputs, we're going to produce 400 PlayStations, we're going to produce 20 houses, right? He's a fan of central planning. I mean, to some extent, everybody centrally plans at least a little bit, right? Large corporations have some form of planning. It's not really the same because they respond to market forces in this. And then governments will call for things saying like, well, we need to have some, housing, public housing, but we need to have something that we call for. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But to say that that makes you pro-central planning is like saying it makes you a fascist if you think cops should be allowed to arrest people who are accused of crimes. Like, come on.
SG advocate. He organized many large corporations to go down this central planning governance route because the market wasn't pricing everything properly. And so central planners had to step in. And BlackRock and Vanguard, places like that, were big parts of that. Don't know if they were directly affected by Carney, but it's the same thing. And they've stepped away from that. And he's a big DEI advocate.
Ooh.
And he's also a net zero
Not the DEI.
advocate. And Carney says in his book, this is a good example of this, and I think also a good example of this kind of narcissism that we talked about earlier. Every single financial decision that every individual or organization makes has to prioritize decarbonization above all else. Or else, and there will be many, he doesn't say casualties, but he implies that, there'll be many who pay a price along the way, but it's necessary, because you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. And then he says, 75% of the world's fossil fuels have to stay in the ground. And this is who Canadians are seriously thinking about electing, right?
Why does he say the fossil fuels have to stay in the ground?
Too much carbon.
The real problem with that is the same problem with the COVID narrative, is that they don't allow any dissent. They don't allow...
God. Where is the clip? Pull up the clip. Give me the lady. Pull her up. I'm sorry, we have to watch this every time we show these segments. Where is the lady? My new book. Why don't they let conservatives speak? As I make the rounds on where is it? Pull it up. Pull up the clip. Where is it? What's the meme? This talking point over and over again of they didn't let us talk about this. We weren't talking about this. We couldn't challenge this. Bro, what? Why do we still say this?
The real problem with that is the same problem with the COVID narrative, is that they don't allow any dissent. They don't allow any data that conflicts with the narrative. And they don't want to look at any possible, both of them are complicated. They're not similar in a lot, but there are, because they're top-down, tyrannical tools.
Do I need copper in space? I don't, right? I don't.
So they did, during the COVID times, nobody wanted to look at any alternative treatments. They didn't want to look at...
These were studied. They literally were studying a ton of different treatments. That's just a fucking lie. You're just lying.
Health, metabolic health. They didn't want to look at any factors other than vaccination and compliance.
Yeah.
With carbon, no one wants to look at, I'm sure you saw that Washington Post study of the last, was it 50 million years, the graph that shows the temperature of Earth. Have you seen it? We're in a cooling period. And that was always during the 1970s, Leonard Nimoy, when he had that In Search Of show, one of the things that they covered was that we are at the verge of an ice age and how terrifying an ice age is.
Yeah, well, the conclusion you draw about climate and carbon dioxide is entirely dependent on where you put the origin point of your graph. So if you go back 150 years ago, carbon dioxide has increased. If you go back 500 million years ago, which is quite a lot longer, we're in a drought, like a serious carbon dioxide drought.
Right, and also carbon dioxide is the fuel of plants.
Yes, turns out that they like it.
God, it fucking killed me. Oxygen is also essential for all of your functions in your body, But if you step into a room where the atmosphere is 100% oxygen, I'm pretty sure you'll die after a while. You can't you can't breathe in pure oxygen for a long period of time. It's toxic to your lungs. What is this one-dimensional? This is the most one-dimensional analysis of things ever. It's so fucking stupid. Is there not like a shred of self-awareness on any of these stupid fucking programs? My God.
The global greening data. Well, when
Yeah, say it. So people know it.
Well,
Yeah, say it.
You know, one of the things I learned as a scientist was that
Oh my God.
there's usually an explanation or two that accounts for a phenomenon so completely that almost everything else is noise. Like the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. The fundamental issue is insulin resistance. Like that's the fundamental plague of, say, North America. And everything else is noise. It's not unimportant noise, but
What?
insulin resistance is the major contributor. On the climate side, when I look at the data, the thing that leaps out for me is
The sun?
greening. It's like the planet is 20% greener than it was 30 years ago. Okay, 20%. This is NASA data. I'm not inventing this.
NASA. Right.
Okay, and then the next question, you think, oh, 20%. If 20% of the plants had vanished, you'd be sure we'd heard about that.
Yes.
Okay, so, and the agricultural output's got up 13%. Now, whether all that additional carbon dioxide is a function of human activity, that's still debatable. It doesn't matter. There is an association between the carbon dioxide rise and the plant propagation. Okay, it's even more particular than that, because a lot of the greening has occurred in semi-arid areas. So
This type of shit actually like black pills me so fucking hard. I don't understand how you can be insightful or intelligent in some area and just be so fucking clueless. It is my biggest fear in life of falling into this somehow. Like, holy fuck. How can you be so stupid and and such a political fucking hack that you can't see what you're doing on this? It's just insane to me.
areas around deserts. And the reason for that is that if there's more carbon dioxide, the plants can close their breathing pores more and they don't lose water. And so not only is there 20% more vegetation, which is a lot, I think it's twice the area of the United States that's greened. That's a lot of green. And where our agricultural production is more effective. And the places that have greened were the very places that the deserts were supposed to expand into. And so, right, because they've greened, they've shrunk, not grown. Now, you could say, well, that rate of change has its problems, and, rates of change have their problems. But I don't see another data point that's anywhere near as stunning as that.
I think it's a really important point what you said, that if we lost 20% of the planets, people would be freaking out.
Oh, my God. Well,
Right,
and
yet
rightly so.
Rightly so. But yet it's not even discussed because, again, it's one of those things that invades the narrative, right? It's one of those pesky facts, those pesky truths that gets in the way of the thing that you're saying, well, the apocalypse is coming.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about the narrative.
I'm curious about, fuck it, let's read it. For NASA. The world is literally a greener place than it was 20 years ago. The data from NASA satellites has revealed I'm sorry. And data from I'm sorry, because has didn't agree with, or the verb in the thing didn't agree. Never mind, I got it. Let me start over. Sorry. The world is literally a greener place than it was 20 years ago. And data from NASA satellites has revealed a counterintuitive source for much of the new foliage: China and India. A new study shows that the two emerging countries with the world's biggest populations are leading the increase in greening on land. The effect stems mainly from ambitious tree planting programs in China and intensive agriculture in both countries. The greening phenomenon was first detected using satellite data in the mid-1990s by Ranga Mineni of Boston University and colleagues, but they did not know whether human activity was one of its chief direct causes. This new... Hold on! Can I just point out, one sec, just real quick, can I just point out how immediately fucking stupid... Hold on.
Change have their problems, but I don't see another data point for parasitical behavior.
Oh my God, fuck me, I just...
Why?
Thinking about pest...
Sorry.
I don't see another data point that's anywhere near as stunning is that?
I think it's a really important point what you said, that if we lost 20% of the planets, people would be freaking out.
Oh my God. Well,
Right,
and
yet
rightly
it's-
so.
Rightly so. But yet it's not even discussed. Because, again, it's one of those things that invades the narrative.
It invades the narrative and it's not even discussed. Yet, the only reason we know about this is because some foreigner, Ranga Mineni, at liberal arts Boston University, did research and then published it on fucking NASA.gov, which is a website that also gives us a lot of information about climate change. Like, what is the narrative here? How do you listen to this fucking sludge, this toxic, disgusting filth, and come away being like, God, he's so right. They would never, I don't know who they are, but they would never talk about this publicly because it blows up the narrative so much. Like, I wonder what the renegade hodgepodge crew of researchers were who dared to defy this. Oh, it's from NASA.gov and it's by fucking liberal universities that are doing the research. Like, come on, what the fuck? It's so stupid. And if you were to look at anything else on NASA about climate change, they would say, oh, it's just climate change propaganda from NASA. Of course. Give me a fucking break. Sorry. I'm curious what this article's even about. It's called the Moderate Resolution Image Spectroradiometer, or MODIS, and its high-resolution data provides very accurate information, helping researchers work out details of what's happening with Earth's vegetation down to the level of 500 meters, or around 1,600 feet on the ground. Taken all together, the greening of the planet over the last 2 decades represents an increase in leaf area on plants and trees, equivalent to the area covered by all of the Amazon rainforests. There are now more than 2 million square miles of extra green leaf area per year, compared to the early 2000s, a 5% increase. China and India account for 1/3 of the greening, but contain only 9% of the planet's land area covered in vegetation, a surprising finding, considering the general notion of land degradation in populous countries from overexploitation, said Qi Shen of the Department of Earth and Environment at Boston University in Massachusetts, the lead author of the study. Wow, a foreigner in the Department of Earth and Environment, which must be a wokey fucking department at Boston University in Massachusetts, the bluest fucking state in history, okay? And lead author of the study. An advantage of the MODIS satellite sensor is the intensive coverage it provides, both in space and time. MODIS has captured as many as 4 shots of your mom's ass on every place of Earth, every day for the last 20 years. And they're huge and they jiggle. This long-term data lets us dig deeper, said Rama Nimani, a research scientist at NASA's Ames Research Center in California's Silicon Valley, and a co-author of the new work. Wow, NASA. Wow, a research center in California. Oh my God. When the greening of the Earth was first observed, we thought it was due to a warmer, wetter climate and fertilization from the added carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, leading to more leaf growth in northern forests, for instance. Wow! So they had a narrative that they thought it was from, and then what? And then they do more research to either verify or counteract the narrative. Crazy how science works, huh? Now with the MODIS data, that lets us understand the phenomenon at really small scales. We see that humans are also contributing. China's outsized contribution to the global greening trend comes in large part from programs to conserve and expand forests. Also, how shameful that China, the developing country with all the pollution and blah, 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 is outdoing the United States now when it comes to environmental stuff. It's so cringe and stupid. And look, we only have this information because of another thing we're getting rid of, which is our abduction of foreign talent. Okay? Who is the co-author of this? What was their name? One of the authors? I think this is one of the authors. Oh, the lead author. Qi Chen. Now, I could be wrong, and maybe there are some people from Ireland or France with that name, but my guess is we abducted this person from Asia, okay? And they're a researcher in the United States of America working at a U.S. college or institution, probably with grants from the fucking government to do this, okay? But we're losing all these people. So China's outsized contribution to the global greening trend comes in large part, 42%, from programs to conserve and expand forests. These were developed in an effort to reduce the effects of soil erosion, air pollution, and climate change. Another 32% there, and 82% of the greening seen in India comes from intensive cultivation of food crops. Land area used to grow crops is comparable in China and India, more than 770,000 square miles, and has not changed much since the early 2000s. Yet these regions have greatly increased both their annual total green leaf area and their food production. This was achieved through multiple cropping practices, where a field is replanted to produce another harvest several times a year. Productions of grains, vegetables, fruits, and more have increased by about 35 to 40% since 2000 to feed their large populations. How the greening trend may change in the future depends on numerous factors, both on a global scale and the local human level. For example, increased food production in India is facilitated by groundwater irrigation. If the groundwater is depleted, this trend may change. But now that we know direct human influence is a key driver of the greening Earth, we need to factor this into our climate models. Wow, what? They change models based on new information that they integrate from research? Go figure. Namani said, this will help scientists make better predictions about the behavior of different Earth systems, which will help countries make better decisions about how and when to take action. The researchers point out that gain in greenness seen around the world and dominated by India and China does not offset the damage from loss of natural vegetation in tropical regions such as Brazil and Indonesia. The consequences for sustainability and biodiversity in those ecosystems remain. Overall, Damani sees a positive message in the new findings. Once people realize there's a problem, they tend to fix it, he said. In the 70s and 80s in India and China, the situation around vegetation loss wasn't good. In the 90s, people realized it, and today things have improved. Humans are incredibly resilient. That's what we see in the satellite data. Wow, what a good science writer, communicator, whoever wrote this article. We saw a problem, people identified the problem, they moved to fix the problem, and through data gathering and publishing studies and research and all of that, they've managed to fix some problems, or at least they're making progress on fixing it, like we did with CFCs in the ozone hole or whatever, right? Wow, what a positive. And this research was published online in February 11th of 2019. This is even old as fuck. Oh, I didn't even check the date on this. Jesus Christ. How fucking stupid to listen to these two fucking retards. At least one is an excuse for being retarded.
I don't see another data point that's anywhere near as stunning as that.
I think it's a really important point what you said, that if we lost 20% of the planets, people would be freaking out.
Oh my God. Well,
Right,
and rightly so.
Rightly so.
But it sounds like that's almost what happened. They saw that there was a lack of greening. They saw that there was a whole bunch of bad shit going on in the 90s, and they did not freak out, but they identified a problem, and then they took steps to fix it.
But yet it's not even discussed because, again, it's one of those things that invades the narrative, right? It's one of those pesky facts, those pesky truths that gets in the way of the thing that you're saying, well, the apocalypse is coming.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about the narrative. It's like, okay, so now we talked about the psychopaths who manipulate belief systems for their own advantage, right? The people who use God's name in vain, the Pharisees who want to dress in religious clothing and obtain status in consequence. They're Christ's number one enemies in the Gospels, by the way, those people. They're the ones who conspire to crucify him.
Oh, wow. Welcome to America. Is the background for my Destiny GG chat, is this black or is this a different color? I noticed for my, oh no, wait. I don't know how this HDR bullshit works. When I go on Twitter on my computer over here, the Twitter background is like super black, like HDR black. But on this computer here, it's not HDR black. But my DGG chat is not HDR black. I have no idea why. It's lighter than the black on Twitter. Oh, okay. That makes sense then. Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
We're going to learn about the world.
Is this making fun of liberals or leftists? It's Bo Burnham. I don't think he's like a ultra heavily political guy. It's more like social-ish commentary. Have you watched Inside? No, I don't know what that is. What does that mean? Uh-oh. Is Ryan Macbeth waking up? Oh my fucking God. Okay, quick random meme question that no one will be able to answer. Except maybe somebody will be able to answer. There's literally no point to me asking this question. On Just Works, if you hire somebody and then you send out the email, but then you realize that it's like a different email, you need to do something different. Is there a way to just like cancel this without having to like schedule like a termination and all this bullshit? Is that possible? Does anybody have any idea? It's so fucking annoying. Destiny, from the USA point of view, what's the difference between Ukraine getting NATO membership and Ukraine having European troops there with a US backstop? Aren't they both tripwires for the US joining a future war via Article 5? My understanding is that Article 5 can only be triggered if your soldiers or your territory is attacked in your territory. I don't believe that Article 5 is triggered if your soldiers are attacked in another country. Wait, we can watch this while I do this. Fuck.
A lot of people asked me to comment on President Zelensky's meeting with President Trump on Friday, February 28th, 2025 at the White House. Look, right now I'm sick. I went to urgent care yesterday. They said it's not the flu and it's not COVID. I'm stuffy, I've been coughing, I have a fever, so maybe I have some advanced genetically engineered Romanian freaking rhinovirus that I brought back to me from Europe. But right now I feel like I've been run over by a dump truck. And the fact is that my latest novel, The Last Republic, is on deadline. It has to get sent to the editor, so I need to get that done. So I'm going to make this quick because I need to get back in bed and die. I titled this video "Are We the Baddies?" after a sketch from that British show, That Michael and Webb Look.
Our caps. The badges on our caps. They've got skulls on them. Are we the baddies?
And this comes at an interesting time because I was just in Poland and Romania visiting NATO sites and talking with NATO members. One of the sites that I visited was JTEC, or the Joint Analysis and Education Center. Our Joint Analysis Training and Education Center, sorry, I'm still messed up. It is basically a schoolhouse that's founded by NATO, administered by Poland, and run by Ukraine. The whole idea is that Ukraine has learned a lot over the last 3 years from their war with Russia, and their instructors come to Poland to help teach NATO members what they've learned, things about drone warfare, robotics, unmanned systems. It's a really neat school. It's a great idea for a school, and NATO is learning a lot from these Ukrainian instructors. All right. While I was in Poland, I attended an exercise where I watched dudes in ghillie suits attack a trench line. And that seemed to me like one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard. Like, why are you wearing some hot-ass ghillie suit to attack a trench line? But what the Ukrainians have found is that wearing a ghillie suit not only breaks up your outline while you're moving across the field to hit the trench, it also lowers your thermal profile, so it makes it harder for drones to spot you. And that's something that Ukraine learned the hard way, and that they're sharing with us now that they have this school, this JTEC. Ukraine never really asked for anything more than weapons and ammunition. They have tested their flesh against metal in order to remain free from the yoke of authoritarianism. And at one point during the White House conversation yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance asked if President Zelensky had ever thanked the U.S. for our help. And yes, Ukraine has said thank you. They helped found JTEC. And it's where we get to learn all of Ukraine's lessons to see how we can apply them to the next war.
Just to be clear, they wanted like a personal thank you, a groveling is what they were looking for.
So not only have they thanked us, they paid us in information. Also, every time Ukraine fires a Patriot missile, that data is going back to the U.S. So we've learned a lot on how to do air defense from incoming theater ballistic missiles just from that. The funny thing is that while this conversation in the White House is going on, I believe while the meeting was taking place, there was a funeral in Ukraine for a young American, a former Marine who went to Ukraine to volunteer, and he lost his life in the fighting. His name was Ethan Hurtwreck.